So, of course, everybody, naturally, as human beings, we're always on the lookout for assurance, even more so during difficult times like today due to the pandemic. So, in just a bit, we will be having a discussion about the impact of the pandemic on insurance products. To tell us more, we have Dennis Tan, Chief Executive Officer, Prudential Singapore, and George Kesselman, President, Insurtech Asia Association. Gentlemen, please.
Thank you and welcome to our discussion. So it's my absolute pleasure to be here today with Dennis Tan, CEO of Prudential Singapore, one of the top leading insurers here in Singapore. And couldn't think of a better person to have the discussion with than Dennis. I think Dennis brings some very interesting background, over 30 years background in banking. In the last 10 years of that has been spent at OCBC Bank as a head of their consumer bank. So Dennis chose, I think, a very, very interesting time to join life insurance and Prudential this year. When I found out that actually he joined in March of this year, just as this whole crazy year has unfolded in front of us. So very, very interesting to have a discussion with you, Dennis. And one of the first things that I wanted to start with is we all recognize that life insurance particularly has been a very much industry driven by face-to-face advice, agents through branches as well. So in this kind of a very interesting environment that we are in right now, how's this face-to-face interaction with the agents have been impacted through this year?
Hi, George. It's really great to be here this afternoon at the Singapore FinTech Festival Fireside Chat. What a year it has been, right? So I personally relish this opportunity that we can come here now face to face. But really, for most part of the year, due to the pandemic, due to the COVID impact, I think it definitely has impacted the face-to-face part of the business. And insurance being a very people-oriented business, and together with many other industries, we definitely had those implications, right? Especially in Singapore in the second quarter, when we went through the circuit breaker period, whereby we couldn't even be meeting people face to face. That had some impact. But I think as I kind of reflect on this year, there has been actually two main things that's coming out from this as well, right? In terms of having lesser of a face-to-face, and I look at the insurance industry having done two things. One is actually the focus on customers and how we are banded together despite the face-to-face being a little bit more curtailed. We have actually served the customers well. And secondly, in terms of pivoting to digital. So what I mean by that for the first one in terms of serving customers is I look around and look at how the entire insurance industry in Singapore working closely together as an industry body and with the regulators, really look at how do we ensure that the public as well as the policyholders really get the coverage. Because ultimately that's most important in this pandemic, whereby we want the coverage to continue for policyholders. And at the same time, having access to financial advisory services, despite the curtailed face-to-face, and also claims transactions that they have to do. So all these are important, and I guess that's the reason why the local authorities, together with many countries, right, looks at insurance as an essential service. So I think that's one thing that I've seen us coming together to better serve customers, and also having the deferred premium plans, right, the installment plans to help segments of the customer base whereby they could potentially be impacted. And the second one is quickly pivoting to digital, right? So I think that digital part really helps us to kind of overcome the challenges that's brought about to the business because of lesser face-to-face interaction opportunities. And wow, I've seen, right, this quick adoption, not just by the financial consultants for us in Prudential Singapore, as well as the industry, but we also see the quick adoption by the public and by the customers. So I think that is something that's good happening out from this whole experience so far.
And I think that makes sense, like there's two themes working hand in hand to basically adjust certain approaches that's been historically there. I think we've definitely seen that during this period, insurance is such a critical thing for customers. A lot of them, I think, in the beginning were wondering whether the COVID is covered. There was a lot of questions around that. So I think that separation of face-to-face, especially in the beginning, together with the products, a lot of the questions, I think drove a lot of the things that we're seeing now. And I'm definitely kind of hearing that positive outcomes. Customers generally have a very positive, much more positive impression. In fact, I think what I've heard is that insurance became a much more top of mind for a lot of people, which I think is overall good for the industry. And I think together with the digital trend that you mentioned, I think it's actually a very, very positive outcome, that kind of a transformation that's happening. So that brings me to the second question that I had in terms of the actual product changes. And I guess the products can be both the actual products, the insurance policies, which typically tend to be a little bit more on the complex side, and I guess the whole overall proposition around it as well. Because I think we've seen that kind of overall product of insurance is starting to change. So I'm very curious to hear from you in what you've seen in Prudential kind of during this year. How has that product have changed?
Absolutely, George. I mean, you talked about earlier, right, in terms of the COVID impact and how this has really brought to mind in the public, in the policyholders' mind, the importance of protection. So with that as the backdrop, we clearly can see that from a product perspective, Prudential Singapore, together with, again, the industry at large in Singapore, having innovated and coming up with different kind of protection products to better serve the customers. And I think this is so critical during this period of COVID. But more importantly, from, if I may share from a Prudential Singapore perspective, other than the traditional coverage products that we will continue to do that, what we have actually done is also, in the second quarter of this year, launching a new solution, a new product, if you will, through what we call Pulse by Prudential. So Pulse by Prudential is actually our health and wellness app. It's a digital app on your smartphone, and that is something that's available not just to our policy holders, but it's also available to the country at large. It means to the public at large. There's no subscription fee, right? Anybody can download that and use that. And the idea of that is actually to come up with this health and wellness app to help people better understand and to take stock of their health situation. And I remember, right, we launched this in Singapore literally in the third week of April. And if you recall, George, third week of April in Singapore, that was the start, right? We were right in the middle, right into circuit breaker, whereby face-to-face wasn't quite allowed. And we thought it is so important because the features in the Pulse app has got 3 basic functionalities that are very critical from a health perspective. One is using an AI-driven approach. You go through the questionnaire and you do a self-assessment, right? You have a self-assessment of your own health. And number 2, if you're kind of perhaps sniffing or you have some symptoms, there's a second feature in there that allows you to do a symptom checker. And lastly, if you feel that you really are in need of a more urgent consultation with a medical professional, and again, right, some people, given the COVID situation, may not want to move out in the public spaces as much, or back then into crowded areas, or even in clinics or hospitals. So the third element in there is the telemedicine, and also with a delivery of the medication. So I think with those 3, that's how we really went out and as a product to really serve our customers. And Prudential now has rolled this out, not just in Singapore, we have now across 13 countries, and Pulse is available in 10 languages, and we've garnered more than 12 million downloads. In Singapore, we have already crossed 125,000 downloads just in the last 7 months. And if you may ask me, what is the bigger picture? Why are we doing Pulse, right? Essentially, it is about really helping to partner our customers in their journey of health and well-being. So we will continue to provide the coverage just like traditional insurers, but we feel importantly that we want to partner with our customer base to keep them healthy for longer, because that is the trend globally as we see. So that's something that we continue to invest in and we will continue to build. And finally, using health as just a baseline that I talked about in Pulse, we are going to pyramid more features in there. So health is the foundational level. And this week, as part of the Singapore FinTech Festival, we are now announcing our next building block, which is the wealth component in Pulse. So the wealth component will allow the customers to better understand their own wealth situation in conjunction with their health. So how do you save, right? Going forward, there's a wallet in there, there's a chat, there's a bot in there that will allow you to find out personal financial services, there's a wealth channel, so on and so forth. So health, wealth, and then we'll build on from communities and work, whereby using Pulse, the work portion also will be available to employers and employees. So that will have a broad-based use effect for the entire country.
I think it sounds very interesting. I mean, I guess it goes all towards a trend of just being more than pure insurance product. Is really about kind of being this inclusive ecosystem. I guess maybe two quick follow-up questions on the Pulse side. So you mentioned that it's basically an app for the customers that has kind of both a check as well as the kind of a health telemedicine component of it. I mean, this is something that there's startups already doing that. How do you think that Prudential doing it kind of complements or kind of what are you thinking is in terms of introducing a kind of a standalone app like that?
Absolutely, I think the more the better, right? So we really applaud and looking at the landscape, really applaud all these other players having all these different solutions. Ultimately, it's about providing this to the public and to our customer base. So this is something that we are very proud of. This is something that we want to add value to our customers so that they can really take stock of their health. And again, it's beyond just the app, it's also building the whole ecosystem, the health ecosystem with like-minded partners that we have coming together, working with Prudential to better serve our customers as well.
And I think my second question, I think it kind of feeds into my follow-up as well, is as you think about overall kind of life insurance and where things are going, we've mentioned agents in the beginning on the first question of face-to-face. We mentioned that the product, digital product that you launched just recently. So how does that all blend together? Like we're seeing that omni-channel is basically the new hot word in insurance, where there is this really natural blend between offline and online. How do you see that in terms of your current impact and as well as kind of going forward? How is that going to combine together?
Great question, George. I think the whole online to offline omni-channel approach is so key in this day and age to better serve the customer. So from online to offline perspective, I think this play is definitely panning out really well in Singapore. And the reason why I say that is I can see us as an insurance industry really understanding the power of data and really harnessing the power of data to really better understand our customers or members of the public at large. And by so doing, we will then be able to deepen our understanding and come out with solutions to better serve the customers. So insurance, as you talked about, right, traditionally has always been a fairly agent, financial consultant-based kind of business, because ultimately it is a people business. So take, for example, Prudential Singapore. Next year, we'll be celebrating our 90th birthday. So we have been in Singapore for almost 90 years, and the great work of the agency through the many years and through the decades is really to serve the Singaporean community here, and not just individuals, but families. In many of these cases, it's a multi-generational focus, helping those individuals plus their family members, right? 2 or even 3 generations. So we're in here for the long haul, and it has been a very people-focused business. But as the world digitizes and digitalizes, there's so much power in data, in using technology, in using digital. So how could we take that and marry that with the offline, so to speak? So the online to offline interplay, the online to offline seamlessness is so critical. And I personally see the power of putting the two together. It's not one against the other, but it's an and. It's not or, it's and. Having these two working in concert to then better serve our customers. So I think that is how it's going to be playing out.
Okay, so it's basically the data that's going to be underlying the overall thing. So it's not just maybe a traditional approach where you take a lead from the online, you pass it to somebody offline, and just creates a very choppy experience. I think it's really about integrating it so that it's very seamless from the customer experience standpoint.
Absolutely.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So one of the other things I guess I wanted to kind of talk to you about is in Singapore now, we've just got an announcement about digital banks, and I think everybody's very excited about it. On the other side, of course, we have kind of all the pandemic going on at this point. Which one do you think is going to have the bigger impact on the life insurance? Is it going to be digital banks on one side, something that's exciting and new, and obviously there's going to be a lot of money invested, a lot of pull towards customers going digital. On the other side, you kind of have something that's still fairly negative, but I think it's being a catalyst for transformation. Which one do you think is your bet is going to be a bigger change?
George, such a topical question, right? So especially in this period whereby the digital banking license has been announced in Singapore, so that's why it's topical. At the same time, it's topical also because of COVID, right? Given it's a COVID-stricken year. My response to that will be that there will be impact. And I will say that there will be big positive impact for the insurance industry. And there are opportunities to be had from both. Okay. From both digital banks as well as COVID. So what do I mean by that? Let's talk quickly about COVID, right? So I think we briefly discussed earlier. COVID, I think to me, two key things have happened, right, with the onset of COVID. One is the heightened awareness of protection. The other one is the fast digitalization. So the public, policyholders, right, customers definitely have this heightened sense of awareness of, oh, am I adequately protected? How about my family? And then during the lockdown, during the circuit breaker period, and especially with a lot of people still working from home, they can devote a little bit more time to kind of pull out the different policies or different bank statements here and there just to kind of put things together. So I think COVID, and just look at their own portfolio. So COVID definitely has heightened protection needs, and COVID also has accelerated digital, right? So how we serve the public and all that. So I think definitely from a COVID perspective, there will be positive impact, and there will be impact in the way how we think, how we reimagine what insurance will be like to better serve the customers. At the same time, to your point in terms of digital banks, insurance companies and banks have always been working very, very closely together. And that's the beauty of it. Two large organizations or two large sectors coming together to really better serve the common customers. So from that perspective, with the new digital bank license being awarded here in Singapore, there's new opportunities for the insurance industry. And at the same time, from my perspective, I'll be keen to watch how this plays out and develop, because what will be the demographics and the psychographics of these new customers that will be having the relationship with the digital banks? Are they going to be more naturally digital savvy? And I think with that opens up lots of opportunity in the insurance industry as well to kind of rethink and reimagine how do you serve those customers? Do you serve them through more bite-sized products that will be available more digitally? So I think these, right, to your point, digital banks or COVID, I personally see that as huge opportunities for us to take this forward.
So maybe I will still have a little bit of time, so I'll throw you a little bit of a curveball question. So now that we talked about digital banks, do you think there's going to be also a digital insurer in the future?
I think insurers are definitely going more and more digital, really. So based on what we have discussed earlier, Pulse by Prudential is one key example, right? So focusing on health, but pyramiding on with wealth, with communities, and with people focused. That means employers, employees, work focused. So all of that, I think insurers definitely are going more digital. And yeah, so I think this space will be interesting to watch, and you'll see a lot more developments, be it traditional insurers or new players as well.
For sure. So I'm really glad that we got a chance to discuss it. I really enjoyed it. I think there's some learnings that I've taken away from it as well. So thank you so much for joining this afternoon. I hope everybody got some interesting learnings from it. And thank you again, Dennis.
Thank you, George.